Good evening, all. So, is it audible? So, today we'll be going through the political science optional orientation. So, what you can expect is that I think we've already uploaded one video on our YouTube channel. So, it was a brief video regarding what is there in political science, but here I'll go into detail what to expect, and we'll try to clear your doubts, whatever you have regarding the optional subject. So, to start with, how many of you have taken a look at the syllabus? How many of you have gone through the syllabus? Okay, only one or two. So others yet to know what is the syllabus, what is there, what you'll be reading in political science. So before we start, I'll just give a brief introduction about myself. My name is Nikhil Gowda. I'm the Political Science and International Relations faculty at Insights IAS. I've done my master's in public policy from National Law School, and I have been teaching political science from last 3 to 4 years in that regard. And I've also brought out many publications. One is on India's nuclear doctrine, which was also published in Lokniti as well as Organizer. And second one, I'm also doing a current research on India's neighborhood first policy. I've been also part of consultation with various political parties in Karnataka. And one area I worked on is District Mineral Foundation, DMF, in Ballari, which is there. That is a fund which is being collected by the government of Karnataka for the welfare of the people who have been affected by mining in this part of the state. And regarding my UPSC experience, I have given a UPSC interview, and I've appeared 4 mains in that regard with political science as an optional subject, and I've also written 2 forest service mains, and I've been guiding the aspirants from last 3 to 4 years. Now coming to the point regarding the optional subject, political science. Manu, lighting problem. So coming to the optional subject now. Now, many of you will have doubts regarding, I am from non-political science background, maybe from engineering or medical or commerce. Can I opt for a humanities subject in the? So one such that this is not exactly your, what you can say, post-graduation or graduation thing. This is a competitive exam. Here it is not necessary for you to know in depth regarding the optional subject as one requires in a master's or a post-graduation. But you also need to have the nuances about how the questions are going to come in the competitive exam and how I am going to answer. So even a person from engineering background, for example, before doing my master's, I had also done my engineering, civil engineering in that regard. So it's not necessary that every time that you have to be from a humanities background to score well in the exam. Even people from non-humanities background have done well in UPSC. So you can see that one person from our state who had scored 302, like 1 or 2 years back, Kaushik Ramurthy. He is for engineering background. So first of all, the first part of your UPSC journey, optional plays a key role because it is going to carry 500 marks. And you can see in this year's scoring pattern, if you see that again, optional plays a very key role in getting your rank. And second one is your interview in that regard. Interview has played a very key role in people getting, a good rank or not. Now coming to the optional subject, first of all, what is there in political science, what we are going to read in political science, and how we can divide the subject. So for that, we can divide the paper, as you know, there'll be 2 papers from one optional subject, paper 1 and paper 2. Now, if you take paper 1 in political science, we call it as, there are 3 parts to it. So let me write. One you will be reading about, I'm discussing about part A. The Western political thought. See, in the wording itself, it's political thought. What do you mean by a thought? Basically, it's an idea given by a particular person. So here, Western political thought refers to certain ideas given by certain political scholars from the West in that regard. So here again, you might read whom to read. Should we read everybody in that regard? Because there are many scholars, not necessary to read everybody. In the syllabus only, they have mentioned that who are these scholars you will be studying about. So certain scholars is that one, you will be starting with Greek philosophers. In Greek philosophers, 2 important thinkers you will be reading is, one is Plato, the other is Aristotle. So basically, Plato is the master, Aristotle is the student in that regard. And you can see Plato's master is Socrates. So now again, should I know everything about Plato? Where was he born? Like what did he study, etc.? Not required. That's what I'm telling. Here you're not come here to do research and know everything about Plato. It's not required. That's not the demand of the exam. But what you need to read here is that certain ideas given by Plato, which is important from an exam point of view. And here again, I repeat, Plato has spoken about many things. Okay, Plato speaks about ethics. Plato speaks about politics. Plato speaks about even what you can say, society. But our main concern is about the political ideas given by these scholars. So in the sense, to give you one sample example, today we say that there are more number of democracies in the world. Today more number of countries are becoming democratic. And you have a scholar, or you can say a person, Winston Churchill, who said, democracy might be the worst form of government, but it is the best until we have an alternative. But if you go back to Plato, Plato does not give a good opinion on democracy, or he has a very pessimistic view on democracy for various reasons in that regard. We have to look into it when we start that why does Plato does not speak about a positive aspect of democracy, because he feels that democracy means where people, common people, have the right to elect the rulers. So he says that when common people do not have the right knowledge to select the right rulers, basically people with manipulative skills or people with not proper understanding of the world, they might come to power. And he blames the what you can say deterioration of city state of Athens mainly due to the wrong choice of the people in that regard, or the democracy as a form of government, it enabled mediocres to come to power. And he gives an alternative idea called as the philosopher king. Means one who is most knowledgeable, he has to become the king. So in this regard, you'll again get doubt, should we know everything or how should be our approach? See, here we'll be only going from an exam point of view. We will be not going from a research point of view. Our concern is that what question is going to come in the exam and how do I prepare to write the best answer. This not only applies to your optional subject, this also applies to your general studies also. Means one mistakes which many students do is that they try to do a lot of research in that regard. They want to become too knowledgeable. I'll give you one ample example why that approach is wrong. I'll take my case study itself. When I wrote my first mains, because prelims was not difficult for me. I only failed in my first prelims. Apart from that, I never failed in any of the prelims what I wrote. But I struggled in mains in my first two mains which I wrote. One problem was my approach itself was wrong, that how I was approaching the mains part. And second one is that I never made attempts to understand that exactly what is this exam is demanding. So when I wrote my first mains with political science, your first attempt is always your best attempt regarding prelims or mains in that regard, because you'll have the josh to study. So at that point of time, I read many books. Okay, in fact, I also had referred Shubhra Ranjan notes at that point of time, but I had also read other books like Pax Indica of Shashi Tharoor, David Malone's Can Elephant Dance, and Rajini Kothari's. There's a book that politics in India in that regard. Now the problem was that I read many things, but I never practiced answer writing. Neither I didn't know what I've read, how I'm going to use in the exam. So scores came out. Basically I had not qualified. Of 1 year we get to know the scores. I had scored I think 180 or 190, both papers together, not one paper, both papers together it was 190. So I was deeply disappointed that I've read so much but still I'm not able to score well. So my thought was that maybe I have to read the right material. Maybe I've not read the right material. So again, I'll refer to toppers. And again, many toppers had written, we had read other books which are there. So I bought few more books again to read. Second means I wrote even more worse. The score declined from 190 to 160. Okay. So now I felt very bad. I'm putting so much effort, but still it's not translating to marks. Maybe I felt UPSC, is not evaluating correctly, etc. But one thing changed in my second attempt was that I had a very close friend of mine. I think many of you will also know. He's currently the CEO in Belgaum, Darshan HV. Okay, 47th rank he had got in 2015. So this person actually changed the way I looked at the exam, because he had failed in 4 prelims. He never used to clear prelims. But in that attempt, he cleared prelims, and what he had done before applying for the exam, his option was Kannada. So he told, I'm frustrated with Kannada because forget about writing means he has not written means already. Right? He told, I need something new because I cannot read this subject same again. So he had changed to political science. And I had seen him now, he had not taken any coaching. He had no time to take coaching because he changed the option while applying for the subject. So basically, he used to read the same notes what we had done in that regard, and he used to ask like which to read, what to read. But one thing he was doing positively was that he was writing answers regularly, and he used to come and show me, you see, I've written this answer. You tell. So my thinking is that what this fellow will write. He said only read the subject for 3 months in that regard. But it was very surprising that he not only got interview call, he got rank 281. So I thought maybe GS he has scored well, because my idea is that political science this fellow could have not scored well. But when I saw his PSIR score, mine was 160, both papers added. This fellow is 281. If you remember in 2015, it was Tina Dabi who got first rank. But Tina Dabi had scored the political science paper 2, she was the topper. But political science paper 1, this fellow was the topper. 151 he had scored at that point. So like I was surprised, like you will have to question yourself. I've read this option subject for 2 years, but I end up getting 160. He's read the option subject for 3 months. He gets 281. It is unfair in that regard. So basically, I asked him like, what did you exactly do? He told nothing, the same material what you showed, but I wrote regularly. So one thing I understood was that one mistake I was making is that I didn't put a boundary that how much I read. I kept reading. But what happens with too much reading? You don't know what to write in the exam, or this exam, it's not a knowledge exam. Knowledge is required to a certain extent. Beyond that, it's a skill-based exam. So he pointed out certain mistakes to me. One, he told, you are not thinking outside the box when you write answers. As I told, like Plato's example I give you, right? Now, before when I used to write answer, I used to just write, Plato told about democracy. But he told if you observe the questions, most of the questions, let it be general studies, let it be optional, they'll always ask you critically comment, examine, elucidate, discuss. So he told me if the examiner, he has something in his mind. Now, if they want you to just write about what is Plato's theory of democracy, they would have given the question directly. What is Plato's theory of democracy? You just explain the theory of democracy. But they're not asking that. They're asking critically examine. What do you mean by critical examination? Plato has told something. To what extent you agree with him, or to what extent you do not agree with him. It doesn't mean I agree or disagree. My analysis should be linked to other scholars. Means I have to bring interlink of scholars. Like when Plato told democracy is not the ideal form of government, we need to build a debate. We need to bring one more viewpoint. If you have Winston Churchill, what did he say? He said that, yeah, democracy might be the worst, but it is the best because we don't have an alternative. The reason why he told is that Plato gave an alternative philosopher king, but that also has many problems, because Plato will tell we have to give the power to the most knowledgeable person, and he gives an education system that how do we select this person. But what many people criticize, like Karl Popper, there is a scholar called as Karl Popper, he says that too much power in hands of anybody, it is always dangerous. He might be the most knowledgeable person in that regard. We cannot also say the most knowledgeable person should be always the most ethical person. Knowledge and ethics is different. We have seen cases where corruption happens or misuse happens. It is the most knowledgeable people who are involved in it. So what I understood when he explained is that maybe I'm not writing the analysis, I'm just writing, plain theories in that regard. And many times scholars become very important, especially for this part A, because you cannot just write your opinion, you need to link to different scholars. So here first we have to study the 8 scholars who are there, that is Plato, Aristotle from your Greek political thought. Then you have Hobbes, Locke, J.S. Mill, Karl Marx, Hannah Arendt and Gramsci. Now using his approach for next year, what I did, all I did was that I didn't read more, I shortened my notes, my material. I built my own notes in that regard. One thing I say, no matter, in market, how much was there, even if we from Insights, if I tell tomorrow, you just read my notes, that will be marketing in that regard. Yeah, one notes you have to read, but based on that, you have to build your own content. You have to bring your own examples. You have to bring your own case. That's the difference between scoring 300 and scoring 240. Read any one material, your knowledge is good, your demand is good, you will get 240 to 250. That's not a problem. But if you are aiming for 300, that extra 30 marks, 20 marks, There the struggle lies. There you need to bring lot of, interlinkages. When you're reading newspaper, if you find some unique examples, you have to add it into your notes. That's the regard. See, because you can see the All India rank 2. Okay, Ankita Agarwal, who is there, her scores of out of box. Like we used to see scores of Karnataka toppers, right? Like most of them, 70, 80, 90 in GS paper 2. But she scored 125 in GS paper 3. This year, GS paper 3, people are scoring around 80, 70. If you see, even topper from Karnataka, rank 31, Avinash, if you see score in GS paper 3, it's around 89 or 95 or something. But how much she has scored? 124. So basically, it takes a lot of effort to get, the above average score in that. That's why I told, whether you join coaching or not, that is secondary. But even if you join coaching, that self-effort should be there. So when I wrote my this time answers, I did a lot of self-effort. I tried to bring unique examples in notes. I built my own notes. I revised that same thing again and again. But I did a lot of answer writing practice. And in 2016, when I got my interview call, it is actually political science which pulled, because GS had not scored so great. It was political science. I scored 284 in that regard. Again, when I wrote in 2017, it was again political science, which I scored 290. So you need to find a way. It's not that, there is popular myths that, when Tina Dabi got first rank, everybody jumps into political science. It's not that the optional will make you score. It is who you are going to score. Just because somebody else is scoring 300, you go join that optional subject, even you are going to end up 300. No. There are a lot of factors at play. What if 50 people are also very dumb who take up that optional subject? 50 also won't clear. What if some optional subject, they're all smart people who have taken up the optional subject? Yeah, result is going to come good. But yeah, anyway, the scoring trend will be there, 20, 30 marks. But it's not that just because you're taking a scoring optional does not mean you're going to score well, unless you make the necessary effort or required effort. So that year, I came to know, no, this does not work just by reading, doing a lot of research. It takes a lot of answer writing practice. So in this part, mainly it is about political ideas. Okay. Not their other ideas, mainly about political ideas. What they've told about democracy, what they've told about rights, what they've told about, government or which kind of state in that. And we say Western political thought is actually the soul of political science, because if you're very strong in this part, it's a repetition. You read or repeat the same thing again in other parts of your part A. You can use the same scholars even in your part B. Yeah, one thing I forgot to say is that many people, how they read political science or any optional subject is that they just read part A and part B as two separates. If you want to score well in the exam, you need to learn to interlink part A scholars with your part B of your syllabus. So one thing is that's why I told, if you're good with these thinkers, they help you a lot throughout all the papers of your political science. And that's what I told. There are 8 thinkers: Plato, Aristotle. Then you have Machiavelli. Machiavelli is an Italian political scholar. He's written a book called as The Prince in that regard. And he's similar to Kautilya of Arthashastra. So that is why you have Jawaharlal Nehru, who told, Kautilya is Indian Machiavelli. But you have one more historian called as Upinder Kaur. She says that why should we call Kautilya as the Indian Machiavelli? Because Kautilya was much before Machiavelli. Machiavelli is a 16th, 15th century scholar. Kautilya is much before that. So she calls him as what? It is Machiavelli who is Italian Kautilya in that regard, because their thoughts are similar, their ideas are similar. And that is something which you will find more with Narendra Modi in that regard. If you have seen how Narendra Modi runs his politics, it is similar to what has been written in Kautilya's Arthashastra or Machiavelli. So Machiavelli basically says that a king or a prince in that regard, he has to always, wherever he goes, he has to show the grandeur which is there. People should be overtaken. That's why you can see Modi's any foreign visit, it will be there. You can see the Madison Square Garden when he went to United States of America, the first visit the PM gave. There are many other thoughts that we'll do once we start with the class, that what is the similarities in that regard. And then you have Hobbes, Locke. These both are English political philosophers. They're from England, Britain, and we call them as social contract theorists. Means they gave a theory called a social contract. So this you'll be reading in class is that we have a state, right? We have a state, we have a government. why do we need a state, or how was this state created? So we call them social contract, because they say state is not something which naturally God created. Because if you take Plato and Aristotle, they say state is naturally created in that regard. But these people do not agree with that logic. They say state is man-made. People made state. That is why they signed a contract with among themselves to create a government for themselves. So you have to look into that. Hobbes says different reasons or different conditions why this contract came about, and Locke himself gives a different contract. And Locke is also called as the father of liberalism. Now whatever we say liberal constitution, the ideology of liberalism, it emerged from his writings in that regard. Then you have J.S. Mill. He is also one of the important scholars regarding freedom of speech, expression, liberty idea in that regard. And he also is a supporter of democratic form of government. So we have to look into his ideas also, what he have presented. Means all of them speak about state, all of them speak about rights, all of them speak about power, all of them speak about democracy in that regard. So you have to understand what is their ideas in that regard, what they say. And then we have what we can say one of the most influential thinker, what we can say in 20th century in that regard, that is Karl Marx in that regard. We have to look into the ideas of Karl Marx. There are 7 to 8 important ideas presented by Karl Marx. We have to look into it, what he says about that. Then we have Gramsci. Gramsci is basically a neo-Marxist. Within the Marxist school of thought, he altered some of the ideas of Marx and he presented new ideas. So we'll be studying about Gramsci. And finally, we'll be studying about Hannah Arendt. So she's a Jew. She was a victim of this Nazi rule of Hitler in Germany. So her ideas are shaped by the experience what she had in that regard. So she mainly speaks about participatory democracy. She gives a new idea of what is power in that regard. So these are the 8 important Western thinkers we'll be reading in this particular paper. So this is about part of part A. This is not completely part A. Now, after reading these thinkers, there is one more part called as the Indian political thought. Similarly, how we have read about Western thinkers, we'll be also reading about Indian thinkers. Now again, you don't need to worry that should I read about everybody. No, you have to read selected Indian thinkers which have been mentioned in your syllabus. Now, what are the selected Indian thinkers who have been mentioned in the syllabus? Manu, eraser illa. Okay. Now coming to Indian political thought, you will be studying about Manu. Read about Manu Smriti, right? The ideas of Manu in that regard. Then we'll be studying about Kautilya. Manu and Kautilya together comprise of the Hindu political thought. Okay, so we'll be studying about what is they speak about how state was created, why a king is required, what kind of role the king has to play in that regard. They also speak about caste system in that regard. So we have to analyze their ideas, their thinking. Then we'll be reading about Buddhist political thought. That is about ideas of Buddha and his followers in that regard. But one thing you have to understand, we won't be reading from a historical point of view. It's not about where Buddha was born, etc. We'll be only studying the political ideas given by Buddha. For example, I think many of you know about Buddhist Sanghas, right? Now, what are they example in terms of politics? What you can relate them to? Okay, so apart from that, let us think something to idea of democracy. How decisions are taken in the Sanghas? Basically, collective decision making. There will be discussion among the monks before they do. That is what we call as deliberative democracy. So if you look about in India, democracy is not something new. Democracy is not something which has been brought by the Western countries and imposed on India. Democracy as a form of government might be brought, by the British in that regard, but democracy as a way of life has existed in India even in historical times. One example is the Buddhist Sanghas in that regard, where the decisions were taken based on consensus principle. So we'll be more looking into the ideas what Buddha has given in that regard. So you can, many of the Buddha's ideas and Kautilya's ideas, they're contradictory. Kautilya speaks about Chakravarti Samrat, means you want a ruler who is very strong, who is very powerful, who is very aggressive, who expands. But Buddha's king, he speaks about not about a Chakravarti Samrat, he speaks about a ruler who is winning the hearts of the people, not the lands of the people. Take for example Ashoka. Ashoka, after adopting Buddhism, he gave up his policy of aggression after the Kalinga war, the destruction what he saw. And if you see in politics, we see something like soft power, cultural power. Ashoka is an example of what is cultural power. Through his Buddhist missionaries, he spread Buddhism across the land. Even today, if you go to Southeast Asia, there are many, what we can say, Indian connections to it. Partly due to even the Cholas who are there, and partly due to Ashoka also is there. So this is what we call as cultural conquest. This is what we call as soft power. Soft power means when you try to change, what is power? Power basically is ability to influence another person. Okay. Hard power means when you hit somebody or you threaten somebody and you change their behavior. That is hard power. For example, today what the European Union and the Americans are trying to do to Russia. They are trying to put sanctions and trying to change Russia's behavior. But what is soft power? Soft power is that when you are able to change another person, not through force, but willingly he is ready to accept the change. For example, if you take India's role in Afghanistan, right? We didn't send our military there, but we did a lot of developmental work and there is a lot of goodwill among the people of Afghanistan. Or today India is using yoga as one of the tools to reach out to the world to build a positive image about our country. International Yoga Day, which is celebrated on June 21st. So you can see most of this soft power, what I'm speaking about, we can find during times of Ashoka. So here we are not studying about principles of Buddhism, etc. Mainly we'll be speaking about what kind of role a king has to play according to Buddha. What kind of government should be there according to the Buddhist ideas, and what kind of rights people should have in times of Buddha. So these will be focusing upon. And then we will be going into the modern Indian thinkers. These are all your ancient and medieval. Modern Indian thinkers. Here we'll be starting with Syed Ahmad Khan. So I think your modern history classes has been done, right? They're telling voice is not audible. It's fine now. Okay. Syed Ahmad Khan. What can you say about Syed Ahmad Khan? Your analysis, you've read modern history classes has been done. What is so special about Syed Ahmad Khan? Anybody? See, there are some people who have doubts that are there two optional subjects in the exam? No, there is only one optional subject in the exam, but that one optional subject will have two papers, 250 marks each. Okay, so there is only one optional subject apart from your 5 written papers. Then you have this what is it? 2 papers which is there. What is it? Optional English and your mother tongue, whichever is there. So there is only one optional paper. Yeah, coming back to Syed Ahmad Khan. What is so special about Syed Ahmad Khan? I don't need facts. You can tell, sir, he started Aligarh University, he got knighthood. That is all facts. In UPSC, facts are not so important. But how do you analyze the facts? That is more important. What is so different from Syed Ahmad Khan and the other social reformers within the Islamic community? Have you read something called as the social reform movements which were there? There were two kinds of movements. One is reformatory movements, the other is revivalist movements. What is the difference between a reformatory and a revivalist? What is the difference? Not sure. Huh? Radical change. In revivalist? The name only it is there now. Revival means you go back to the past. See why Syed Ahmad Khan is important. He has given many ideas. I won't go into his ideas. But if you look among the Islamic community as a whole in India, most of the Islamic movements in India were revivalist in nature. Ahmadiyya, Deoband, means they never asked for modern scientific education. They all said that Islam is in danger from the Western world. We need to protect Islam. Among them, only one who tried to reform the community was Syed Ahmad Khan. When he started the Aligarh University, where he told Parda system should be done away, he told women have to be given education in that regard. And why his ideas are important even today? Because we can see the Sachar committee. I think how many of you know about Sachar committee? It was appointed by the UPA government. They told, if you look at the Muslims status in India, it is there one of the most backward communities. So Sachar committee had recommended 4% reservation, but it was not given in that regard, but they recommended 4% reservation. Now we look into why the community is so backward. Like you have to think why we read history. History is not just biating facts. Many problems of today or many issues of today have links in the past. If you have analyzed the 1850s, social religious reforms which happened in 18th century, what you'll observe, take Parsis in that regard. Today, Parsis are one of the most forward community in India. Take it in terms of jobs, in terms of education, or in terms of their women empowerment in that regard. Hindus, to a certain extent, it has happened. But in Muslims, it is more backward. The reason was that if you look into our social religious reform movements, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Dayanand Saraswati, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, in Hinduism, there was more of reformatory movements rather than revivalist movements. They were revivalist. You had this Bharat Dharma Mahamandal and Dharma Sabha who are telling, no, we want Sati system, we want caste system to continue. But these people try to reform it. But among Muslims, there was only one social reformer who truly wanted to reform the community. That was Syed Ahmad Khan. Okay. So here, that is why we need to understand his ideas in that regard. His ideas is relevant even today, because what Syed Ahmad Khan had told back then, he told if Muslims have to prosper, they have to get educated. And that was the sole intention that why he started the Aligarh University, to give them scientific education. And the other thing unique about him is that it does not mean he's rejecting Quran. He didn't reject Quran. He said Quran can be interpreted scientifically, but most of the Maulvis at that time, they're giving a false interpretation of the Quran, and that is what the root cause of the backwardness among the Muslim youths. So he asked them to take up, modern education. He told that they have to, enter scientific education, rational school of thought. So that we have to link that how his ideas are relevant even today. Get the point? So here we'll be studying about his main ideas. But again, you don't need to worry, sir, should I read when was he born, where did he get educated, etc. No. This is not a quiz contest. Simple na, in exam, even if you don't know when Syed Ahmad Khan was born, it doesn't matter, because in mains exam, you'll be writing the answer. So what do you write? That much is enough. Understood? About Syed Ahmad Khan. Then you'll be reading about M.N. Roy. I think you would have read about M.N. Roy also in modern history in that regard. Who is M.N. Roy? Basically, is one of the founder of the Communist Party of India. And M.N. Roy is one more, what you can say, unique thing. He was the first person to ask for a constituent assembly. I think your political classes is not yet over, right? So when you read, you'll know that. So basically, you'll be reading about M.N. Roy, his ideas in that regard. Then we have Gandhi, Ambedkar, Aurobindo Ghosh. Aurobindo Ghosh is important because he speaks about cultural nationalism in that regard. So he gives a new definition of nationalism compared to the Western countries. So these are the thinkers you'll be reading about, the Indian political scholars. And most of the questions will be based on these thinkers in that regard. So this is about the thinkers you'll be reading in Western political thought and the Indian political thought. Again, I said, you don't need to worry, Gandhi, should I know everything? No, Gandhi's political ideas mainly required. And I think Pradeep sir would have already told you, Gandhi is one person who can get you 150 marks in the exam. Okay, so you take panga with anybody, but don't take panga with Gandhi. So make Gandhi always your friend, irrespective of what is your idea of Gandhi. And apart from these things, in part A, we'll be reading about certain important concepts. We'll be reading out certain important concepts. So don't you find it is the subject name is political science. So what is so scientific about the humanities subject? Correct, no? Political science. What is the relation between politics and science? We are here not telling science from a biology or physics perspective. We are speaking about a scientific approach. What do you mean by a scientific approach? What do you mean by a scientific approach? What do you mean by scientific approach? Calculate. It is basically a logical approach. So basically you need to use logic to understand. So political science as a subject, it is an attempt to understand political phenomenon through a logical way, through a rational way. And anything which is science, it is based on evidence, which can be proved, which can be shown. For example, if you say, there's a difference, right? Now, there is a difference between true and false, good and bad. Now, if I say, on today is June 2nd, right? June 2nd, 4 p.m. in OGP2, there was political science orientation. True or false? There is only one answer. You can give true if you are telling the truth. But if the question is changed in such a way that the political science orientation was good or bad, some people might say it was good, some people might say it's bad. Chuma repeated the same thing. So good and bad, you cannot have a scientific say what is good or what is bad. Good and bad is always a gray area. For some people it might be good, for some people it might be bad. So basically here the attempt is about studying political science from a logical, scientific point of view. Because the subject was initially dominated by the Greek political thinkers, which was mainly a philosophy. In philosophy, the problem is that you cannot scientifically prove it. Okay, philosophy is like you can see karma. Karma means if you do something wrong, bad is going to happen to you if you do something good. Now, how do we prove karma? You cannot bring scientific evidence to it. But if you have observed in TV, now how to study politics, you have seen during times of elections, you have this, what is that, exit poll, you have opinion polls. Now, these are all based on scientific, they'll collect data, they'll collect the data, interpret the data and give an output in that regard. So political science, why? Because in 1960s and 1970s, the subject's nature started to change. Now, many people started using scientific methods to study politics. That is why the subject became political science. So because this is what you'll be reading, that what is political theory? Political theory has two parts, political philosophy and political science. What is the difference between the two? Why did we transform from political philosophy and political science? And there was a huge debate. There was a huge debate among the people that which is more important? Is philosophy more important or is it science more important? But today, among the political science fraternity, there is an acceptance that both philosophy, that is values, and both science, both are important in that regard. So that is what we'll be reading in the first part. Then second part, we'll be reading about the ideas of ideologies. We'll be studying about different ideologies. So you can say that, today in popular reading newspaper, you'll be writing right wing, left wing. What is this right wing and what is this left wing? On what basis we'll say somebody is right wing or somebody is left wing? Ideologies. But yeah, how did the term come out, right wing and left wing? Now we say BJP and the RSS, they're right wing. We say Communist Party is left wing. Congress is here, neither. They will say whether center of the right or center of the left. They'll be taking turns. So how do we bring this classification? Actually, it goes back to French Parliament. In French Parliament, those who are sitting on the right, they were all conservatives, in the sense they wanted the monarchy to continue. Those who are on the left, they wanted radicals, they wanted complete change, they wanted democracy. Those who are in the center, they wanted monarchy to continue, but with certain amount of new changes or rights to the people. This is how the terminology left, right. So we'll bring different ideologies under different sectors. For example, if you take as we say in India, BJP and the RSS, they come under the right wing because they speak about the past, they speak about the past glory. They want the society to continue the previous customs and culture. If you speak left wing parties, CPI, etc., they want radical changes in the society, completely alter the social structure. But that is political terms. But if you come to core theoretical terms, we have to read the ideology of liberalism, Marxism, communism, feminism, environmentalism, Gandhi itself. Many people see Gandhi itself is an ideology, Gandhiism in that regard. So we have to look into what are the important principles of liberalism. And this is also the second most important chapter apart from your thinkers, because as I said, if you know thinkers well and if you know ideologies well, the rest of part is nothing but repetition of the same thing again and again in new terms. Because after this, you'll be reading about power, you'll be reading about rights, you'll be reading about democracy, and you'll be reading about legitimacy. Now, all these theories, and you'll be reading about state. In all these thinkers, you will have the same repetition of what you read in your Western political thought and your ideologies chapter. So again, think democracy. In general, we say democracy is government of the people, by the people, for the people. But here we'll go from a theoretical perspective. Democracy, there are different kinds of democracy. For example, in India, what we follow? Representative democracy. In Sweden, they have participatory democracy in that regard. So within democracy, you have a liberal model of democracy, you have a Marxist model of democracy. And recently, if you see, you're reading current affairs, there was this democratic summit which was held. And there China made a statement that we are the most democratic country in the world, because you've seen the name of China only. It is Democratic People's Republic of China, or People's Republic of China. So they themselves also call them, they are democratic. Or let us take India's case. We say India is the world's largest democracy. Okay, that's a good thing. We're the world's largest. But if you go according to the rankings of economic intelligence, EIU, there's an agency called as EIU. They recently released a report. What is India's ranking in that? How much India ranks? Nobody reads newspaper. Just normal, come join an institute, current affairs, monthly material, by art, go there. See, one thing you listen, no matter who says what, you have to have the habit of reading newspaper. It's not only I'm telling from an exam point of view, even if you're not preparing for UPSC, reading newspaper is always an habit. But reading newspaper is an art. Okay, some people always follow Buddhism. Buddhism always follows middle path, not extremes. It is also dangerous to read newspaper 4 to 5 hours a day. But it is also dangerous not to read newspaper at all. Because some toppers will come and tell, I didn't read newspaper, I directly read monthly material. You cannot relate yourself with that particular topper. They'll say, because if somebody in their first attempt, they've read newspaper 1 year, they didn't succeed. Next attempt they would have written, they would have not read newspaper so much. It is okay for them because they have the background reading. It is not okay for you to directly come and tell Vision 365. And you see people who read Vision 365 times, but they fail to clear UPSC 1 time also. Simple. Why? Because they don't have the background. They just go into by hearting things. You have to read newspaper, but you have to read it for 1 to 1.5 hours. That's all, because many issues are irrelevant. And newspaper reading itself is an art, and you have to contextualize. If you're good with the syllabus, you'll know where to link what. So in this data, what they gave, it is important for this chapter on democracy, because though we say India is the world's largest democracy, it is only in quantitative terms, not in qualitative terms. Why? Because democracy has various features. What is essential elements of democracy? Inclusiveness. Second one, people should be the major role players. Third one, accountability should be there. Transparency should be there. Regular elections needs to happen. And free media should be there. These are the essential features of a democracy. But the problem in today's world is that we said in 21st century, there are more number of democracy in any time in human history. That is correct. We have around 150, 140 countries which are democratic. But the problem is that all countries do not have quality democracy. Let us take India as an example. Now, if you look at our parliament, parliament is one of the important reflection of a democracy. What is the women representation in parliament? It is approximately 14% out of 2019 Lok Sabha elections. Women constitute 49% of the Indian population, but they represented only 12%. Okay, let us take out, 2 days back, Hindu newspaper had one editorial page, a very good editorial page. 3 girls topped UPSC exam, a very good thing. But there is also a bad thing. What was the overall representation of the girls in civil services? 26%. Means Indian democracy is not inclusive. There is one more organization called as Association of Democratic Reforms, ADR. They also had released in newspaper a report. According to their data, 66% of India's MPs today who are sitting in parliament are millionaires. Indication more number of people with money power are getting into politics. So just because we say there is a universal adult franchise, we have given political rights to everybody, that everybody can go stand for elections. But in reality, everybody can't go stand for elections because the average costs for a bigger state per constituency, you need around 8 to 10 crores to stand for elections. It is beyond reach of common man. And the same report also said there are more number of criminals entering the Indian parliament. For example, you can take 36% of our MPs have serious criminal charges against them, rape, murder, etc. Now there is a scholar called as Milan Vaishnav. He's written a book called as When Crime Pays. One thing in political science is that you need to start using these kind of scholars and their books in your answers to fetch more marks. That I'll be telling in the class which book to know. And even if you are reading Hindu newspaper, every Friday or I don't know which day, they give book review column. You don't need to read the whole book. Okay, that is a mistake I did. I don't know, Pax Indica, I read the whole book. What I realized, it was waste of reading the whole book because the book is 300 pages. I read 300 pages. What did I use in my exam? Zero. I didn't know what to use. And I told her that Darshan, my friend, I asked him one question, what you wrote on India, Pakistan. He told, I wrote introduction that Shashi Tharoor in his books Pax Indica calls India, Pakistan as brother enemies. I told, where did you read this? Did you read Pax Indica? I told, who read Pax Indica? I just borrowed it from notes. Some notes was there that even in Shashi Tharoor has written a book. Now what will happen to the evaluator? Now evaluator cannot come and cross question you whether you have really read that book or not. He'll think that you have read that book. That's why I told in UPSC it's not knowledge, it's about how your presentation skills. So this Milan Vaishnav, what he says that more number of criminals are entering Indian politics. The whole book is about that, but I'm summarizing the book and telling you. He says there are 3 reasons why in India criminals are entering politics. First, he says that in India to win elections, what is the main thing? Money. Who can have that kind of money? Criminals, you cannot tell every time Narayan Murthy will go. That is one part. But you take in Karnataka itself, most of the rich politicians, land mafia, sand mining, only they can have that kind of money power. Second most important is muscle power. If you go outside your classes, you can see that big boards will be there, billboards. Big picture and small cartoons will be there. Supporters. Muscle power means not body muscle power. The men power, you need to have the support of your local leaders in that regard. And who can have that? Criminals will have it. Criminals will have that kind of linkages. Third one, he says, people of India itself, they romanticize criminals. He says people like criminals. Why? He says that, let us think tomorrow, I go on to become an MLA or a minister. In future, let us think 20 years, 30 years down the line. Now tomorrow you will have a son, daughter who is appearing for KPSC interview. Karnataka public service. You will come and ask, sir, do you know me, right? I voted for you in election. You please get my daughter, you give a recommendation. I am a honest politician. I tell no, if your daughter deserves, you go fight. Then you will go to Mr. Kumaraswamy. He'll tell, brother, come, I will recommend. He will recommend. Now people will like whom? People will like the person. So they say criminals are ready to break the law. Criminals are ready to break the law and do. Means they are telling sometimes they go beyond the law to do for the people, for their constituency. That is why they have more chances of winning election. That is why the book name is When Crime Pays. So it pays you in a form of dividend. It gets your seat. It gets your political power. So that is what they say. Why India ranks 46 in democracy is that we might be the largest democracy, but there are various problems. Okay. So in this chapter, we'll be again reading various theories in that regard regarding democracy. So this holistically together comprises part A of your political science syllabus. Now coming to part B, that is the Indian government and politics. This is nothing but a copy of your Lakshmikant. Same to same. What is there in your Lakshmikant? What you'll be reading for GS? Same to same is there. So we'll be studying about Indian Constitution. We'll be studying about what you can say, pressure groups. We'll be studying about, briefly we'll be studying about Indian national movement. In Indian national movement, you don't need to worry that, sir, should we read like what we are reading for GS that I have to remember everything? No. Here it will be only the analytical stuff, non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement, role of Gandhi, etc. And you have to look into previous year questions also, how what kind of questions they're asking. They're not asking, minute questions. They'll ask broad questions in that regard. If you remember in UPSC 2015, they've asked one question. How many of you have gone through your previous year question papers? GS1, GS2, GS3. What one question they've asked? They've asked one question on Indian freedom movement. They've asked how different would have been India's freedom struggle without Gandhi. Okay. Mentorship class, yeah. So here the questions will be more about analysis. So here the same, what you read in your spectrum and your Bipin Chandra, that is more than enough to cover this part. So this will be briefly about, 1857 revolt, non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement, quit India movement, peasant struggle, and your tribal movements. What are the causes? What is the effect? Then you will be studying about holistically about Indian Constitution. So what is there in your Lakshmikant? That is fundamental rights, directive principle of state policy, preamble, parliament, judiciary, panchayat raj institutions in that regard. So mainly the Lakshmikant part, the full will be repeated here. And then you will be studying about party system. We have different political parties in India, right? BJP, Congress, etc. We'll be studying about what is the party system in India. We are a multi-party system. Was it the case that we are multi-party system from before? There was something called as Congress system from 1950 to 1967. That is the term coined by Rajni Kothari. We need to understand what is that. Then we'll be studying about pressure groups. Then we'll be studying about social movements. Social movements in the sense, environmental movements in India, that is Chipko movement which was there. And many of the women movements in India. For example, recent times, if you see that temple entry movement which was there. So these kind of things will completely comprises of your part B. So this is nothing but same to same what you are reading in your GS2 polity. There's nothing else. So this together comprises of your paper 1 of political science. Now in this part, what you need to understand, part A, which I showed, it is 80% static, 20% dynamic. In the sense, 80% is just thinkers, theories, etc. Part B is 60% static, 40% dynamic. How many of you feel that reading static things is very easy? How many of you feel that, if there is a static subject, I'm better off? Or everybody feels that, dynamic is more important? See, one thing, because some people have this doubt, because many people do come to me and say, sir, political science is a bit dynamic, I'm a bit scared to take in that regard. See, it's not about political science. General studies, which is there. If you believe that you can write static answers and score marks, you are never going to be in the list. This exam is all about connecting the theories or connecting your basic concepts with the current events happening in and around you. So it is inevitable whether you take political science or you don't take political science, you cannot shy away from the fact of reading dynamic things. You have to read dynamic things. For example, what do you mean by dynamic? Now, in recent times, you can see that there was one issue which came in newspaper regarding judiciary. Increasing of tendency of cases. In Hindu articles, it is coming every week, one article is coming. Now, that is a dynamic part. Means we need to link that why there is judicial delays in India. You know, right? There are almost 3 crore cases which is pending in India. This data is given by National Judicial Data Grid. Why there is 3 crore pending cases in India? It had come in recently Hindu editorial. One, correct, as we told, people to judge ratio is very low in India. There is a lot of delays in judicial appointments in that regard. Second, see what is the problem? Then many of you have read the editorial, but you just read it once, you don't, what we can say, structure it and read it. Second point is that the lack of infrastructure. Many courts do not have infrastructure. Third one, the attitude of the judges. Many judges unnecessarily they postpone the cases. They give too many, what you can say, adjournments in that regard. Or okay, so these kind of data, what you read, you have to use it in your GS paper too, as well as in political science. Getting the point? So the dynamic part, it's not that every day you have to newspaper or every day you need to update. You just need to find out what is the issue which has happened regarding this particular topic. If that issue is there, you just have to add it up into your notes, or you have to know that how to use it in the examination. Let us think, even static stuff can have dynamic. Okay, for example, let us take preamble. Can anybody say, because last year if you see UPSC question, prelims I'm speaking about, they had given a question that what were the words which was originally mentioned in the preamble. If you remember, that question was there in 2021. My point is that why had they asked that question in the exam? Why didn't they ask about 1935 Act? Why didn't they ask about fundamental rights? Do you think the examiner put a dice and told, okay, now I'm going to ask on preamble? Why did they ask that question? The reason they asked that question was that last year there was an issue which happened. What was the issue? On Republic Day, the official government Twitter, it shared a photo. In that photo, only 3 words were mentioned. India is a what is that? Sovereign Democratic Republic, SDR. Now the opposition party started shouting, saying that they have removed secularism and this thing, socialism. But then the government gave a reply that this is the original picture, the original constitution book picture we have posted, because the word secular and the word socialist was added through an amendment in 42nd Constitution in 1976. So UPSC is also framing questions based on what are the issues which are happening in and around you. So if you feel that you are only going to study static stuff and not focusing on dynamic part, you are not going to achieve your UPSC goals. And that's what I told, not every dynamic issue is important. You have to know what to read, what not to read, that I'll be telling you in the class. So any doubt regarding this paper 1? Any doubt regarding paper 1? If anybody has any doubt, you can ask. Nobody has any doubts? You guys don't have a habit of asking doubts in class. Is it the case in your GS also? You need to ask doubts. Okay, you need to have questions in mind, because blind following won't happen, right? You know, I guess you know a joke also, a story also, which is there. In one part of Karnataka, there was a village. In this village, they used to, what you can say, do a ritual. Means whenever they do any puja, they used to tie the cat. Any puja, anything in that village, they used to tie the cat. Nobody used to ask why. Everybody used to do the same thing. Everybody's house, they used to tie the cat before they do the puja. And one fellow who questions, he came to that village. So he asked those villagers, why are you tying the cat? I told, we don't know. Our fathers used to do, even we are going to. So he asked the fathers, why did you are doing that? He told, we don't know. Our father used to do, even we are doing the same. Finally, he was very curious to know that why they're doing like this. And finally, he found, some old man in that village, etc. Then he went and asked him. Then that old man told, in our times when we were doing puja, the cat used to come and drink of the milk. That is why we used to tie the cat. Now these people are blindly started following the same thing, that we have to tie the cat before we do any kind of puja. So this is any class, you have to not blindly follow what has been said. You always have doubts. You need to always have questions. And many times you might be, not have confidence to ask the question like what others might think in that regard. If that is the case, if you have no doubt, that's fine. I'll take the credit that I'm explaining correctly. So any doubts before we move on to paper 2? Yes, there is a linkage between paper 1. As I told, the thinkers, what you read, Plato, Machiavelli, Kautilya, you can use them in Indian foreign policy and paper 2 theories, which are there, international theories, realism, feminism, the ideologies, what I said, they again repeat in your comparative politics part. Yeah, part 1 is completely static. That theory is what you read here, you can use it in your paper 2 also. Anybody else has a doubt? See, ideally it takes, the classes, it will take 3 to 4 months. So you complete reading one, I think it requires 5 to 6 months to prepare for the option. You need at least 5 months to prepare for the optional with the writing practice. That's it. Anything else? No extra knowledge is required. As I told, you can read your NCERT books for Indian part, but political thinkers, you don't need to read extra knowledge. That will be directly taught in the classes. Okay. But if you want to refer some books, there are certain books you can refer apart from the class notes. That will be, one will be O.P. Gowda. Then the other book you can read is Subrata Mukherjee. But these books have to be read once you read the notes, because once you start reading the books will be too vast and you don't know what to read, what not to read. So once you are done with the classes, once you have read the notes, you can use this as a reference. Let us take unique examples or to take unique quotations in that regard. Why I am telling is that, see what happens that when you read only one notes, the rest of them also would have read the same notes. And this is a competitive exam. In a competitive exam, marks are not allotted like degree. In degree, as I said, now if you are writing the same answer, the other person also read the same answer, will get the same marks. But here it's always you have to be one step ahead of your competitor. And for that, you need to bring something uniqueness in your answer. And if everybody are using the same quote, if everybody are using the same example, obviously the evaluator will know that, this is common content. So that's what I told, the 30 marks, 40 marks, how you can improve is that while reading newspaper or while reading these standard textbooks, if you find I can add some example, or I can bring some case study in my answer. That will be appreciated by UPSC. Okay, UPSC is always about being unique in that regard. So you can refer these two books for certain points in that regard. For rest, you can depend upon class notes. And for part B, you can read for the history part. You can read Spectrum. For polity part, you can read Lakshmikant. And as a reference, you can refer to B.L. Fadia. There is a book called as B.L. Fadia, Indian Government and Politics. Very fat book, but that's what I told. You don't need to read the whole book. Selective studying has to be done. But again, all this has to be referred once your class notes is read. But Lakshmikant is one book you can read in the starting itself. Okay, because Lakshmikant you'll be reading for GS also. It will be useful for political science also. So these are the sources what you can refer. And for part B, as I told, it is a 40% dynamic, right? So you need to regularly follow Hindu or Indian Express articles editorial. If you have struggled regarding which editorial to read, I have already told, I think Insights IAS has a PSIR political science channel. If you have joined there, we have been regularly, every day we are uploading important articles which are in newspaper from a political science point of view. And we are also releasing a magazine every month called as News to Notes, where we are giving extra content such as book reviews in that regard, or certain important articles which are important from an exam point of view. So this will cover your dynamic part. So this will be the sources which you will be referring for your paper 1. Okay, Rishi Vinayak has that, sir, is it PSIR full of analytical because I am from arts background? See, the answer for this question is that it's not only political science, the whole exam itself is analytical. It is an analytical exam. Why I am telling? There are many government exams, right? If you take UPSCs for IAS, IPS, SSCs for central government jobs. In Karnataka, you have FDA, SDA, PSI, constable exam. Everything is government exam, banking exams. And in every exam, you have to read about polity, you have to read about geography, you have to read about economy, you have to read about history. But if you have observed one thing, the quality of questions in UPSC paper and the quality of questions in your other exams, such as banking, SSC, is slightly different. If you have seen in Karnataka, many people write FDA and SDA. If you see, they are more factual in nature. They'll ask, who is the president of World Bank? Where was the recent BRICS summit happened? But if you have referred to UPSC question papers, they'll never base it on facts. They'll mainly base it on analysis. Why is that? So the one question they asked is that, is political science analytic? I am telling it's not only political science, everything in UPSC you have to analyze. The logic is simple. If you pass this exam, what you are going to become? Not just administrator, you are going to be the head of the department. Like an IAS is the head of a district. IPS is the head of the police administration with a particular district. Now they don't want rote learning parrots to go and occupy that post. What do you mean by rote learning parrots? Just biating things and going and writing. They don't need such people for the exam. They need people who can think. They need people who can analyze things. So this exam is more about your analytical abilities. So there is no choice for you. Whether you are good or bad in analysis, it does not matter. You have to improve your analytical skills. And what do you mean by analysis? Looking at things from different perspective and trying to analyze what are the pros, what are the cons, and what needs to be done. So in that regard, yes, political science is an analytical subject. You need to analyze well. Okay, you cannot just go by heart facts and go right. And that is also not needed for this exam. Okay, when will be the next batch of PSIR option? Yeah, as I told, the first batch is starting on June 25th. The second batch, we have not still decided a date. It may be, last time we did our second batch, I think in November or something like that. But the second batch will be started once the first batch is completed. So first batch is starting on June, it requires 4 months. Then I think the second batch will be sometime in November or December. Any doubt regarding paper 1? Okay. Now let's come down to paper 2. That is part A again, part B. In part A in paper 2, you have comparative politics and international relations. Here, what you will be studying about is that the name only it is there. What do you mean by comparative politics? It is nothing but comparison of political systems of different countries, especially the developed countries and the developing countries. For example, let us take India and Britain. In India, we are a republican state. Britain is a monarchy. Monarchy means queen is the head of the state. Who is the head of the state in India? It is the president. Or if you take India and America, India is a parliamentary democracy. America is a presidential system. Basically, in our system, we have two heads. Prime Minister is the head of the government. President is the head of the state. But in America, president is the both head of the state as well as head of the government. Then we'll be also comparing how political parties work in India. How do political parties work in Europe or America in that regard? And how do pressure groups work in India? How do pressure groups work there? So this is a comparison between different political systems. And as you told, where we can link part A, Aristotle is considered as the father of comparative politics because he was the first person who compared different constitutions of the world. So again, you can link here to comparative politics part. This is one part. Second part, you will be reading about international relation theories. There are certain concepts in international relations. See, IR, many of you will, study in general, like, India, Pakistan is there, etc. But IR is a concept-based subject. We need to understand it conceptually. For example, what is national interest? What is balance of power? What is deterrence? What is collective security? What is, what you can say, mutual assured destruction? And we'll be reading about international institutions. We are not referring all the institutions because if you take internationally, there are 44, 50 institutions, but the major ones, United Nations, World Bank, IMF, WTO, International Court of Justice, or your recent World Health Organization. But we are not bothered about, something like International Labor Union, etc. Only the major ones which are in use, which are important. And even if you have referred previous year question papers, they mainly asked on World Bank, IMF, and United Nations Organization. So this holistically comprises of your part A. So this is more of global politics, understanding how politics happen at global level. And it is a very interesting part, this one. And this is one area where you can score very good marks because this is where you can show your uniqueness. Okay. And this is also more easier to understand provided you have already understood part A. Okay. And in your part B, as the name only suggests, it is India and the world. That is about evolution of Indian foreign policy, making of the Indian foreign policy, and India's relation with the neighboring countries. That is Pakistan, China, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan. But again, you don't need to worry, sir, should I know everything until no. Mainly we study as India and South Asia as a whole. And then we study India's relation with major powers. Which are the major powers? China, USA, European Union. And they've mentioned Japan, Israel, Russia, and they've also mentioned about Afghanistan, the recent developments in Afghanistan. So this is mainly about your Indian foreign policy. Now this is where many people actually are scared, or many people have concerns regarding, because this is dynamic, right? Foreign policy changes each day in that regard. But what you need to understand is that they are not asking minute changes. They are asking broad policy changes in that regard. For example, when Prime Minister Modi came into power, there were certain changes happened. And one such change was between India and Israel. If you look back historically, India never had diplomatic relations with Israel till 1992. That was P.V. Narasimha Rao in 1992. He actually opened diplomatic relations between India and Israel. In the past, India had ignored Israel. There were reasons to it. One, in India, basically Indian foreign policy at that point of time was not realistic. It was not like based on Kautilya's policy. It was based on idealism. Idealism means based on moral values. So basically Gandhi, Nehru, everybody, felt that India's relation with Israel is not required because Israel had forcefully taken away Palestine, means they had occupied Palestine. And actually even this, who is that? Albert Einstein, he actually writes a letter to Nehru saying that he's a Jew, right? He says that you build good relations with Israel, but Nehru will decline. The second reason why they'll do also is that domestic politics, because Congress was ruling India at that point of time. Muslims have a great voting share in India in that regard because they're the largest minority. They felt that building close relations with Israel will hurt Muslim sentiments because there was a huge Muslim Islamic world support to Palestine. The third reason was that oil. India gets 70-80% of oil from whom? The Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC, or your Gulf countries. So if you go openly establish relations with Israel, the Gulf countries will be miffed with India because they were backing for Palestine. But slowly things started to change. By 1980s, when Rajiv Gandhi became the Prime Minister, Rajiv Gandhi is more of a businessman. He thinks always from a business perspective. He told this is a foolish policy what we are following because by 1980s, many of the Arab countries themselves had diplomatic relations with Israel. So why should India ignore Israel? So he was the first person who actually allowed Israel to open a small office. He didn't open an embassy, allowed them to open a small office in Bombay. But it was Narasimha Rao who completely changed, who established formal diplomatic relations between India and Israel when they opened their embassy in India, and India opened their embassy in Israel. Now 1992, so this is which year? 2022. 30 years has happened since this has happened, and India and Israel are celebrating this year. So you can expect a question on India-Israel in this year's exam, either in GS2 or political science. Now, what is so special about Modi's rise to power? Even after establishing diplomatic relation with Israel, no Indian Prime Minister, be it Narasimha Rao, be it I.K. Gujral, be it Sri H.D. Gowda, or be it Manmohan Singh, or be it Atal Bihari Vajpayee, they never visited Israel. It was a sentimental message that we don't want to hurt the Muslim world. But with the rise of Narendra Modi in India, things changed because he became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel. That is what we call, he de-hyphenated the relations. So in Israel also, the diplomats, before they were, they started jokingly saying, all these years, India treated Israel as a mistress, but now it has openly acknowledged her as the wife. Mistress means somebody whom you have illegal relationship, illegitimate relationship. But now under Modi, they've openly told we are going to have relationship. This we have to study, that why did Modi do like that? Why? What was the reason for it? And this is not Modi's first visit to Israel. He had already visited Israel as the Chief Minister of Gujarat. So we are not here to study, which are the agreements which are there, how many agreements are there. You don't need to worry about that. It's more about understanding the policy change. Why the policy has changed, what is the impact of the policy change, and what India has to do. And there is a method of writing answers that I will showcase once we start with the classes, because it will be too new. See, one thing what many students will do mistake is that even in mentorship classes, what we have seen, for some or the other reason, students have this habit of doing answer writing from day one. You cannot write answers if you don't have content. There is no use if you just keep writing some nonsense on the paper. It does not help. Your answer writing does not improve just by writing. That you will say your handwriting improvement might happen. Only when you have knowledge to a certain extent, then your answer writing will add value to it. But just, like some question, what is earthquake? It is there in NCERT book, seeing the same thing and writing in a page does not make answer writing. Neither UPSC is going to ask a question like that. So that's why you don't worry about answer writing with political science from day one itself. Build some knowledge, build some content. then you can work on answer writing improvement. But yeah, answer writing plays a very key role. I'm not denying that answer writing is most important. But answer writing is not something you say that you start from day one writing one page. No, first build some content. You need to have some content, right? Only then you will be able to write good answers. So I will teach once we feel that we have sufficient content. I will try to show how to write good answers, or I will explain few answers in the class itself. Or we have one more initiative called as PSIR Analytical. We have launched from June 6th, where we'll be discussing one previous year question and the answer for that daily in that. So this holistically together comprises of political science and international relations. Now coming to the point, as I already told, who can opt for political science? People from any background, medical science background, commerce background, medical background, engineering background can opt for it. And anybody who likes Indian polity, that is a subject which you can take. And if you actually see, people from non-political science background have scored better in the exam than the people from political science background, because for people who are from non-political science background, it is easier for them to adapt to the demand of UPSC. But those who have been already studying from political science from 3-4 years, it is slightly difficult for them to change their approach required for the competitive exam. And coming to the biggest advantage with political science, one is that if you can say to a great extent, political science overlaps with your general studies. For example, let us start with essay and ethics. As I told, you will be reading about Gandhi, you will be reading about Plato, you will be reading about Machiavelli, you will be reading about John Rawls, which is there. Now, most of these thinkers are useful from ethics point of view. Okay, a lot of things what they've said is related to ethics also. You can use the same people in your ethics paper. And you know, the ideas of equality, justice, etc. Again, it will repeat in ethics. Essay, if you see last year's essay paper, 3 statements what they've given, it is directly from political science, Hegel, Karl Marx, etc. And many times political science knowledge will enable you to write good essay. And if you take GS paper 1, if you have gone through that, you have parts of modern history, you have parts of world history, post-independent India. Now all these things you'll be reading in political science again. And if you take GS paper 2, almost 80% of GS paper 2 is political science, because Indian government and politics, international relations, which is part of it. So we can say to 50 to 55%, it overlaps with your GS, but the way of answer writing is slightly different in political science compared to your GS. It is almost similar, but slight difference is there. In some GS answers, you don't need to write any theory. Okay, you can just use statements of political experts. For example, you can write about Raja Mohan in your GS paper also. You can write in political science paper also. But you don't need to write about somebody like what we can say, Hans Morgenthau. He's a scholar who comes in realism. You don't need to use him in your GS paper answer. That you need to use in your political science answer. But like opinions of experts, general experts, newspaper experts like Raja Mohan, Viewpoint, you can use it in your GS paper also. So there is a slight difference that you will understand once your classes will start, or once even you start preparing in that regard. So this is one of the biggest advantages of political science. And one small example to say you, like, you know, what we'll be reading in political science. See, this is a basic idea what we'll be reading in political science. The idea of equality. Now, everybody, we speak about equality, etc. But there is no one understanding of equality. Different people have different understanding of equality. Now, you can see I've shown 2 diagrams. Now, in this diagram, if you go by the definition of equality, equality means what? Absence of discrimination. You should not discriminate against everybody. So here, we have not discriminated against anyone. We have given a stool of same height to all the 3 individuals. Okay, there is no discrimination. We have treated everybody equally. But here, if you go into the concept of equity, we have not given him any stool. We have given her a smaller stool. We have given this small fellow the bigger stool. This is what we call as equity. So many times only equality won't lead to justice. You need to have equity. So this concept is also related to reservation, or we can also call it as affirmative action. So this we need to link to different theories. Like for example, I told liberalism. There is within liberalism, there is neoliberals, the 21st century liberals. They don't agree with this. They reject it. They say, why should we give to others? It's not our problem. Who told that fellow to be shot? They say inequality is natural. We can't help it. It is not our duty to, modify these inequalities. They always accept this. But you have one more ideology called as socialism. They don't agree with what liberals are saying. They say we need this. Why? Because they say all inequalities are not natural. There are certain inequalities which are socially manufactured. We need to correct that. Example, caste system in India. You cannot tell caste system is natural. Some person born from head of Brahma, some person is born foot. They say no, it is not natural. It is socially created segregation. And they say that some people are at a disadvantage. For example, if you take in Karnataka, we have rural reservation, KPC. Why it is there? You cannot expect a rural candidate to compete as an equal with an urban candidate. The competition will be like this. This is an urban candidate. This will be a rural candidate. When the competition will become fair, when we give extra thing to the rural students. So that is what socialism will say. So you're getting the point. This is how we'll be linking the theories and we'll be trying to understand various issues. But this is only on the, what I can say, the upper part. We have to go into the depth of it. For example, within reservation also there is many issues. For example, if you go into part B, this can be linked to part B also. The reservation policy in India. There are various issues coming up. For example, now you can see these Jats, Marathas, they are telling even we need reservation. Give us OBC status. Why EWS was created? But we have to question now, why suddenly government came and created EWS, which was not there all these years. If you go back to the Indira Swahini judgment which Supreme Court gave, there they told the reservation should not cost 50% mark, and they told reservation should be based on not just economic criteria but also your social backwardness. But why government has now come? Because that can be judicially reviewed, but judiciary has not interfered there. Because you can see what is happening in India. Many of these communities like Jats, Marathas who are there, these are all forward communities, agriculturally dominant communities. Before in 1980s, 1970s, reservation is seen as something inferior. If you are taking reservation, you are looked down upon. That time situation was different. We were more of an agrarian society. Today our social structure is changing. Means the second generation, third generation are there. They don't want to go back to agriculture. They're all educated. But the problem in India is that we are witnessing jobless growth. The GDP is growing, but jobs are not being created. Right? That is why many of you are here. Otherwise, you are declining jobs are coming here, or not getting jobs in private sector. Or you can see the, especially after 2008 financial crisis, when private sector, they fired recently, Unacademy fired 1,000 educators in that regard, hire and fire. So people feel government job is more safer. But competition has increased for government jobs in that regard, and that is where it has taken a turn, where now many communities have started demanding give us reservation, and especially the dominant ones. Why we call them dominant? Dominant in terms of political terms. Means they have huge numbers, they are a vote bank. So they are able to pressurize the parties in power that they have to give reservation. So Congress gave reservation to Jats in 2014, but Supreme Court cancelled it out, saying that this is violation of the constitution. Marathas got reservation in Maharashtra. That was upheld by the Bombay High Court, but Supreme Court cancelled it. But now these political parties have to do something like votes they need. That is when they came out with something called as economically weaker section, EWS, a new category of reservation criteria. So we'll look into that. What is that creamy layer concept which is there? There is question of why creamy layer is not applied to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Should it be applied or not, etc. Karnataka, if you take Karnataka state, We had a committee called as Sadashivaya committee, which made a study on internal reservation among scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Why that report, though it has been given to the government has not yet to take any call on it. So we'll be all looking into these kind of issues. So that's what I told. It's more about analysis. You need to understand the context and you need to understand the theories. And coming to the most point, like many people, usually I don't like to go into success ratio, etc. But inevitable, because if I don't do it, others will do it. Success ratio in the exam is that like how many people have taken the optional, how many have cleared. One thing about political science, you can see that it is on the rise. Means more number of people are qualifying from political science. So starting from Tina Dabi when she got first rank in that regard. Now this year also if you can take second rank. But I won't say that just because somebody got second rank and somebody got 300 that you take the option. I don't believe in that kind of marketing. If you like the subject, if you are interested in the subject, it's a subject which you can take. Never take a subject because it is scoring. Any optional be the case. The reason is that what happens is that just because somebody else are scoring does not mean you will score. You need to check whether are you comfortable with the option, are you able to understand the concept, is it according to my strengths and weaknesses. Now if you say that okay sir, I'll take an optional which has 20% success ratio, you can take Maithili subject, it has 50% success ratio. 3 people or 4 people wrote, 2 people passed. So that can't be the criteria for success, like percentage. That's the thing is that the first important criteria should be, are you liking the subject? One. Second criteria, you have to know in and out of the subject. You cannot just see, some people what will happen, they just read for example, let us take certain NCERT books and they'll think the subject is also like that. NCERT is just a basic thing. This requires certain level of specialization in that regard. But yeah, if you go by the success ratio number, political science has been consistently doing well. It is above 9% or above 8%, which is the success ratio. And this year again, you can see many people within top 100 are from political science. And our test series in Insights itself, we have got 2 ranks. One is 106, that is Akshat Ayush, and second one is 595, which is Meher Panwar in that regard. So we'll have one session also from Akshat Ayush, but when he'll be coming to Bangalore, because he's from Delhi. And you can see these are the ranks over the years which few toppers have got with political science. Ankita Pannu, Abhishek Sharma, Kirti Kiran Pujar, he was from Karnataka. One of my friend was there. He had scored 305 in that regard. And this is an example of questions that are asked in the exam. For example, you can see, how is liberty a precondition for equality? Explain the relation between equality and liberty. This is a part A question, paper 1. So they're asking you to write and discuss about what is the relation between equality and liberty. Because why this question has been asked, or what is the context is that, see, always there is a, what you can say, a dilemma. Is equality more important or is liberty more important? Because some people say where there is liberty, there cannot be equality. Where there is equality, there cannot be liberty. But some people say no, you can balance both equality and liberty as well. So there are different scholars, different thinkers who come in this regard. We have to analyze from that perspective. Second question they've asked, as I told, this is part B. What are the provisions in the constitutional protection of freedom of religion and how far they have succeeded in promoting secularism in India? A straightforward question. So Article 25 to Article 30, Article 44, that is Uniform Civil Code, which is there, that is also linked to secular principle in India. Article 14, Article 15 can be also linked here. Then how far they have succeeded in promoting secularism, you have to analyze. Okay, to a certain extent, yes, it has promoted secularism, but what is there in paper is different. What actually happens is different. So you can see that how there are communal rights in India. Why do communal rights happen in India? What are the reasons for that in that regard? And paper 2 part A, the feminist approach to international politics is biased comment. Now, see, this is where I told innovation is required. You would have read about feminist approach, but the question is asking feminist approach in international politics is biased comment. See, what is feminist approach in international politics? That what do women think about international politics? What is their idea of security? What is their idea of a state in that regard? So women or feminist scholars believe that if nation states are led by women or women become the president and prime ministers, the nation state will be more friendly, there will be more cooperative, there will be less war, there will be more emphasis on cooperation. But certain scholars says this is biased. Why they'll tell there is biased? If that was the case, then why did India go to war when Indira Gandhi was the prime minister? So it is wrong to say that women are environmental friendly, men are not. If you take both Gandhis, Indira Gandhi and Mahatma Gandhi, who was more peaceful? It was Mahatma Gandhi. But then you have to write, yeah, this one bias is there, but there is a lot of contribution of the feminist school of thought to international politics. But that you'll understand once we read into feminism. And this is a part B question. In the history of foreign policy, seldom have relations between two nations blossomed as fast as the case of India and Israel. As I told, this question they had asked because of Modi's visit to Israel. Which they're asking, if you look at India's history, within a short span of time, the relations between India and Israel have bloomed or blossomed. You have to explain that. So now, just now I told history, right? The historical approach. So this is how you can expect the questions are going to come in the exam. And the target here we say is target is 350. Okay, yeah, I know it is a very high number, but you can achieve it only when you believe it. You can do it. Okay. See, what will happen is that even some people who have failed to qualify for the final list. Few people know they're sad. They have come. So they're telling their next plans. So like one student had come. So he told, I'm short by 30 marks. I'm short by 40 marks. So I want to improve, sir. He's got, I think, 89 or something in GS3. So I told, I want to get 95, sir. 95 is the average. See, never think in terms of averages. Always think of the best. So if you want to aim to score, you have to aim to score what rank 2 has scored or rank 1 has scored. I don't have the scorecard of rank 1, but rank 2 scorecard is available. You can see. He has scored everything above 120. She has got 155 in political science paper 1, 147 in political science paper 2. So 350 is possible, but it requires effort from your side to do that. So in our main thing in our classroom is that it will be mainly done from an exam point of view, not from a subject political science point of view. Second one, we'll be giving short tests in the class itself. It's not like how many tests are there. It depends upon how well you read and how frequently you write answers. And you can come for the review of your answers anytime, as long as insights you can come. And the thing is that the main goal will be to minimize these sources as much as possible. But there will be always an element that you can refer newspaper. You have to refer newspaper in that regard. And our main goal is not to make you a rote learning parrot. Rote learning parrot is what? Just by hearting things, etc. But ensure you to give you the required skills, what you need for the exam. So because you have what you can say, a popular saying that, do not feed a fish to man every day. Instead of that, you teach him the art of fishing. Why you know that? See, you can't come to class every year. You take class one time. Some people, what they're bothered in class, what I have observed, even in GS classes, is that some people say that, syllabus is not complete. Or some people say that, this portion was not complete. This notes was not given. See, for me, classroom approach is not about learning the subject. It's more about learning the skills of that subject, how to read that subject. Suppose you don't clear in first attempt, you're going to give a second attempt. At least you have to know, right, what needs to be done, because every year you cannot come and join a class. So that will be our goal. And these are certain Google reviews on Quora. You can go check it out about the previous batches which is there. And Netra Meti is our, again, one more test series student. She got 326 All India rank, and that video is also there in our YouTube channel. You can go check. And the course will be for 4 months duration in that period. Class notes will be given for the most parts, but some parts I'll tell certain articles what you have to refer and read in that regard. And the main emphasis will be given to answer writing approach, because end of the day, it's not only good that you know the subject. All it matters is that how you write the subject, because mains writing skill is all matters. Even if you know, nobody is going to care for it. So you have to learn writing good answers. So that will be taught in the class. So this is all about political science orientation. So there are a few questions like, sir, is there classes on weekend? No, the classes will be from Monday to Friday. Okay, the time will be fixed shortly, but it will be Monday to Friday. There will be no classes on Saturday and Sunday. And one more question is that, is it compulsory to go through modern history before we go for PSIR? Not necessary. If you have gone through, it's good. But if you have not read it also, it's fine, because we'll be not starting with modern history. We'll be starting with Western political thought. Duration of the class will be 2 hours to 2.5 hours. Okay, because I can't, it's not possible for me to take class for 3 or 4 hours, because I'll only lose interest. So duration of the class will be 2 to 2.5 hours, Monday to Friday. Is it necessary to read Hindu, Diplomat, ORF? See, one question many people ask is that should we refer Diplomat? Diplomat is basically a website which is there, which releases articles on this thing. See, I wouldn't suggest that every day you go read Diplomat. What you need to do is that, first of all, you have to identify the issue. That issue you just need to type it in Google. For example, let us take now Afghanistan, right? Taliban has come to power. The issue is what? Should India have diplomatic relations with Taliban or not? That's a big question mark. There are certain policy changes happening. Initially, India told it is going to be an Afghan-owned, controlled peace process. But now the Indian government is making subtle changes. For example, our external affairs minister, he attended one of the meeting where Taliban representatives were there. So basically, India is doing its back channel talks to connect with Taliban. If that is the issue, India, Afghanistan, what you need to do is that read 1 or 2 articles in Diplomat or ORF. But you have to know some articles are repeating same thing they're saying. So if you find any good article, which is they're giving a new viewpoint or a new opinion in that regard, that article you can convert into a notes or just take some important facts or quotes in that. But don't make it habit that every week go and read Diplomat, every week go and read ORF, not necessary. And where you can find, as I told, the political science channel is there, na? Insights PSIR channel. There we are uploading important articles, which you can find it there. It's not necessary that you only find. If any important article comes, we will be posting it there. That you need to read. But some we are summarizing in our news to notes, that you will get content. But you want to read the article, we'll be posting in the channel. Okay, will the classes be conducted online? How it will work? How will be the answer evaluated? The classes will be both offline as well as online in that regard. Offline students can get their answer evaluated. Online students, what they can do is that they can click the screenshot of their answer and send it through Telegram in that regard. Or you have a separate portal for it. In that portal, it will be uploaded and you will get the soft copy of it. Yeah. Any other doubt in this part? Anything else you have not understood? No doubts? Crystal clear? Okay, then. So I'll just end this session now, and the classes will be starting on June 25th, and the admissions is open now. See, anything you have to, if you are going to give 2023 attempt, you have to be ready with the optional subject by December. You have to start from now itself. Now itself. If you are going to give next attempt, from now itself. Any other doubt? The recordings will be there now. Yeah, same like how your the current GS classes is happening, where you have an online portal. You can see the class one time. One time option will be there. Class notes will be sufficient, but as I told you, have to make value additions. I won't say that, if you just read class notes and go, all is that needed. Yeah, 80% you can bank on class notes, but 20% value addition you have to make. But class notes will be provided for, it will be uploaded in your portal after every class on what we have completed. Anything else? No, newspaper, that's what, don't note down every day. Every day is not required. Just keep reading them. So as I told now, we'll be giving in news to notes magazine in that regard. But once you complete all your theories, you'll have certain newspaper articles, right? There you can make certain validation, but don't try to make notes every day. Every day making notes is not required. And it's humanly impossible even if you make everyday notes to read so much and go right in there. Only the most important ones which we tell that you can read and add certain, facts or data in the answer. But don't try to make notes every day. It won't help. Okay, Vedant Hegde asked that, sir, how to develop a neutral viewpoint, because most of the prominent media channels are accusing each other. See, you don't need to look into this Arnav Goswami or other news channels in that regard. That won't help. See, neutral viewpoint is that for every what you can say topic, you have to have a counter viewpoint. For example, let us say Swachh Bharat. What are the positive aspects of Swachh Bharat? What are the loopholes in Swachh Bharat? And what needs to be done to move forward? So don't try to bring political views. Try to bring policy views in your answer. That is more apt. So classes will be held in Delhi or Bangalore. The classes will be held in Bangalore. We have not launched in Delhi still. Delhi maybe will be only launching next year. So this year the classes will be in Bangalore. And the duration of the course. Class timings has been not yet fixed in that regard. It will be either between 3 to 5 or 5 to 7 in 2 slots. And should we read the whole constitution? No, please don't read the constitution and reports and all. Lakshmikant is more, because I told you are not going to be a lawyer or something like that. Just need to read Lakshmikant. No need to read the whole constitution. Doubt clearing session for students. Yeah. See, actually, as I told, for online students, there will be a portal, right? You can post your doubts there in that regard. And there will be one person to moderate it. Today, we don't have a moderator. That's why I'm not able to follow many online comments. But the moderator will tell us what are the doubts they've asked, and I'll be able to clear in the class. Sagar Parthasarthi, okay, what is your question? Can you repeat again? Because I've lost it, your question. We'll have a separate Telegram channel. We'll get notes and daily updates. Yes, you will have a separate Telegram channel. Like now you're part of your GS channel, right? Like that, you'll have a political science channel where we will be uploading the thing. Is test series included in this course? No, test series is not part of the course. We'll only have certain answer writing programs. Test series is itself a separate course. And test series is not required at this stage unless you complete a course. Okay, Vivek Kumar, you can ask your question because I've missed few questions. You can ask your question again. See, Jyoti Agnivamshi has a question that is PSIR syllabus vast compared to other subjects. See, it is not about vastness, because in political science, many things repeat again and again. Some subjects might look small, but once you start reading them, they might be horizontally wide. But in political science, vertically, they've given what are the subjects you're going to read. So vastness, I don't think so in that regard. But yeah, if you compare to a subject like science subjects, like, mathematics or physics, yeah, in that regard, it might be vast. But compared to humanities, almost they're one and the same. Class timings, as I told, it will be in evening or afternoon. Vivek Kumar, I think I cleared your doubt. The classes will be in Bangalore. So will it help in essay? Yes, it is definitely going to help in essay. As I told, many essays are from political science quotes or political science based theme. Difficulty in choosing a PSIR and sociology, that you have to attend sociology orientation session. See, if you ask me, I will tell naturally go for political science. That regard, right? Hmm. 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 See, See, one thing with dynamic, I told, in dynamic, what happens, you can predict the questions. They're not going to ask random questions. If now quad is happening, question will come on quad. So you can go with pre-prepared. In sociology or some other option, even if it is static, if you write static stuff, you won't get marks. For example, if you're telling how family structure is changing, you need to write the recent developments about how the Indian family structure is changing. That's what I told. To look, some subjects might look static, but once you start reading them, the same. But see, that's what, see, marks is dependent upon you. That's what I told, if first ranker is called history, first ranker is from history option, why don't you take history option? So it doesn't work that way. It works very depend on what you are going to do with the subject rather than what the subject will do with you. So that's that. But yeah, you attend both orientation classes, then you can make a choice. How to differentiate optional from GS2? As I told, there is not much difference between optional and GS2. As I told, for certain GS2 answer is not necessary for you to write theories, but you can write experts' opinion. As I told, for example, John Rawls' theory of justice is there, that you don't need to write in GS paper, but you can use it in political science. Apart from that, rest remains the same. What you read for constitution, what you read about election commission, the same thing you write for optional also. How to develop analytical abilities? That will only come by, what you can say, looking at previous year question papers, reading editorial pages. Editorial pages are one thing which gives you analytical, abilities in that regard. So how to develop is that start reading editorial pages, try to analyze them, and try to look at previous year UPSC questions. Try to see what is the demand of the question. Then try to look at few toppers' answer scripts. You'll get an idea that how they have written answers. So that is how you develop. But it's a long, ongoing process. You can't expect from day one. You need time. You need at least 2-3 months to develop analytical abilities. Okay. So I think almost all the doubts have been addressed. So we'll end this session here. So we'll have in between, if Akshat comes to Bangalore, I think he might come. We'll have one more session from the topper in that regard. But the classes will be starting on 25th. Okay. Yeah.